Good morning on this Sunday, October 20th, and welcome to the Georgia Gang. The Scouts are in Metro Atlanta for the 5th Democratic presidential debate. Just where will it be held? The latest fundraising numbers are in. What do they tell us in the race for U.S. Senate? And the AJC reports former Atlanta Mayor Kasim Reed had taxpayers picking up the tab for health insurance for Reed and his family a year after he left office. Theron, Phil, Janelle, and Alexis are all here. The debate and discussion begin right now.
From the Fox 5 studios, the Georgia Gang starts now.
The 4th Democratic presidential debate is behind us now. All eyes turn to Metro Atlanta on November 20th. The Democratic candidates who qualify for the debate will be on stage here in what is sure to be a dramatic showdown. Theron, any insight? Will the Dems pick kind of a midtown spot, a downtown spot? Will they go to the 6th congressional district? We know that's very important. You were there this week. Surely you have some scoop.
Well, you know, a lot of us, we would love for it to be in the city of Atlanta. I think that the DNC is on the ground, as you stated. They're looking at multiple locations. There are some folks that have suggested maybe having it in the Congressional District 6 or District 7. There's also been some talks about, you know, the level of security that's going to be needed, because I've been able to go to 2 debates. And one of the things that viewers don't see is the amount of protests, good and bad, mostly peaceful. Believe it or not, there are some Trump supporters that show up to this debate. And so I think they're really looking at, if they have to do it in, say, Atlanta, does it sort of you know, get involved with messing up traffic and, you know, people's quality of life. But ultimately, I think we need to make the decision soon, because I think that folks are already asking me for tickets and asking a lot of folks for tickets. But the DNC, they've done this, and I think that wherever they select, folks will be able to hopefully get tickets, and then there will be a lot of debate watch parties across the state.
Phil, what do you think? I mean, does location matter? This is a high-profile event coming to Metro Atlanta.
Well, it might be nice if they put it in one of the suburban areas, because that's where the battleground is going to be. As I said last week, though, I welcome whenever a party can do a major debate in a city or a state. And as I said, I think the contrast is very necessary in terms of the fact that the state Democrats and the national Democrats are going far to the left. And I want the independents and the moderates to see just how radical these folks are. So the more people that watch these debates, the better.
All right. Well, Janelle, you know, I want to turn to the U.S. Senate races here in Georgia. The latest fundraising numbers are in for the quarter. No surprises, really, that incumbent David Perdue raised $2.4 million with more than $6 million in cash on hand. No real need to spend any right now. Right. You all were at the James Magazine event last night. You all were able to talk to him one-on-one. A lot of insight that he brought. What was kind of his mindset and his feeling on the race?
You know what? I think he's just trying to stay focused on making sure that whatever he does, that is something that's going to, you know, lead to benefits. We already knew that Senator Perdue was going to raise the most money, and that's not a surprise. I looked at a lot of the other races. I mean, I saw that Carrie Handel was beating out her primary candidates as well with raising money. And to me, when you can raise money, that's another means of polling, in my opinion, because people vote where their dollar is. And so I think it's a good look for him right now.
Alexis, let's talk about this, because on the Democratic side, we know that it's early, but fundraising numbers can tell us who has the momentum. And Jon Ossoff brought in the most money. So let's talk about, do you see him kind of as the front runner actually on the Democratic side here?
Well, it's interesting. He certainly can have the most money raised because of the enormous amount of money, the record-setting money that he raised when he ran for the 6th district against
and the name
Karen
recognition.
Handel. So he has that name recognition going for him. However, both the other candidates, Teresa Tomlinson and Sarah Riggs and Ted Terry, they raised a good bit, but not as much. So I think they also have name recognition in their central areas, but Ossoff is definitely the national celebrity star.
Theron, let's put this in perspective, because I think it was Sarah Riggs Amico who said she's putting her money where her mouth is and putting $400,000 of her own money into her race. But still, if you look at the cash on hand, which is really the important part, you know, Ossoff has triple the amount that she has cash on hand.
Yeah, I think Sarah Riggs Amico wanted to show her donors and her supporters that, hey, I'm in this race to win it, so therefore I'm going to put $400,000 of my own money in. And I think they all expected Jon Ossoff to do well. And listen, when you raise $800,000 in 3 weeks, as Jon Ossoff did, and more importantly, Laura, what you just said, if you got $1.3 million on hand, that's game changing. And so one of the things that I'm looking at, particularly in the Teresa Tomlinson race and Sarah Riggs-Amico and Ted Terry, is that their burn rate, how much money they're spending. And you look at it, Teresa Tomlinson and Sarah have spent a lot of money, but I think that their strategies are a little different than, say, Jon Ossoff. But the one thing that Jon is able to do is that he's going to stack this money, because I think that his name recognition is high around the state as well because of this national race we saw. But I would tell these campaigns, whatever you've been spending it on, you may want to kind of decrease that burn rate, because when it gets time for the primary leading up to those last 2 months, if Jon Ossoff is sitting with the most money, with his digital ability to really ignite his base and really to connect with his voters, then I think that that's something that they got to be very concerned about.
I also think that he's copying Stacey Abrams' strategy, too, of working the ground early, getting people registered, getting offices around the state. So I think he really is running the smart move.
And Theron's making a good point on the money burn rate. Both parties have to be very careful and time that just right. I would say this, I think it is very telling, though, when U.S. Democrat Senate leader Chuck Schumer is still trying to interview people to run for the U.S. Senate. It kind of shows that these are weak Democrat candidates, although whenever you have money, you can be dangerous on either side. And when Janelle and I did speak with Senator Perdue last Thursday night, he was very pleased with a recent poll that had his favorability rating among Georgians right at around 50%, which is great for an incumbent. And as we all know, in either party, it's tough to knock out an incumbent.
And obviously, he doesn't have much of a burn rate right now because he doesn't need to. But what does it say when the Democrats, combined raised as much money as Senator Perdue? I mean, he's sitting pretty
well,
now.
it says what we've all agreed. This is a very swing battleground state, and that a ton of money is going to come in here in 2020 on both sides. That's what it says.
Well, let's talk about, we like to call it race number 2 with the jungle primary. We still have just one announced Democrat in the race for the retiring Senator Johnny Isakson. Still no announcement from Governor Kemp on his pick, or really even a deadline, and really no big names this week, I don't think. Phil, you're kind of my watcher of the resumes that come in online.
Well, he is meeting with some people. That's what we're hearing through the grapevine. And, we've talked about the names, but it's really hard to say. I don't even know if he's thought about who he's going to do.
Yeah, I don't think the Democrats are not going to say anything until they know who the pick is, so they won't know the opponent.
But I did hear from some Republicans this week that they're concerned that the longer the governor takes to select he or she to be the person that goes on to represent the district, the Senate seat, is that they're worried that the longer you wait, the less amount of months and days this person, he or she, has to fundraise. And so keep in mind, this person on day one, he or she is going to have to fundraise. And so let's say if the governor hypothetically waits until January, there's like this 30, 45, 60 days that could have been devoted to fundraising to this person. So I am hearing little rumblings that they are kind of pushing him to say, hey, okay, this application process is great, it's good, it's public trust, but
how many's got to interview?
You're making a good point, but the conservative PACs are going to pour in money no matter who it is. On day one.
I cannot believe that Phil Kent is basically welcoming and basically saying that the federal PACs, which you bash on the Democratic side, are going to come in here and save this person.
Well, on both sides, that's how it works, unless you want to change it through campaign finance.
Janelle, do you think it's smart? Would he announce like a top 5?
No, I don't think he's going to do that. I don't think that would be smart either, because then it kind of, what do you do when you create a competition, right? So I think he's sitting well. I honestly don't think he should rush and put someone out there just to have a name out there. I think that he should continue to kind of take his time. We still have a little more time with Johnny Isakson in the seat, so.
Well, it's a game on both sides. I mean, the longer he waits, the longer the Democrats have to wait, because they need to know.
They can't raise money either.
They can't raise money.
Right.
That's
but we do have Matt Lieberman, who really tried to kind of get some earned media this week with a spoof ad on a Brian Kemp ad from a scuba tutorial campaign. You saw the ad.
It was
We're
funny.
showing you some video now. Theron, what'd you think?
Listen, I don't know Matt Lieberman personally, but for those who know him, listen, I think he gave himself, or he had $250,000, I think that was reported, which, look, for a first-time candidate, it's not bad. I think this ad, it didn't have the effect that Governor Kemp's ad when he was running. It's not going to make the national news the way that this one did. But look, he's doing something. And I think that it's and listen,
But it was fun.
and it was fun.
Automatic weapon.
And I think,
talk about
listen,
the Second Amendment.
Well, but I think
The Second
it's all,
Amendment comes after the first. That was so funny.
yeah,
I
but
think it's funny.
it's some, don't count this guy out. He's got some
Plus, he's got his
humanization.
dad.
Well,
His
is
dad
that
on
the
his-
way? Is
on
that
his
the way a
advisor.
candidate introduces yourself? You might want to maybe talk about a kitchen table issue that actually affects Georgians and their wallets. It looks like that ad looked like it was produced by a sixth grader.
It's just like the governor's ads. It was the same.
That was good if he duplicated it.
All right, well, coming up,
He did,
a
exactly.
report, taxpayers footing the bill for the health insurance of former Mayor Kasim Reed and his family. We'll discuss straight ahead.
Have a question or comment for the Georgia Gang? Email them at georgiagang@foxtv.com.
Former Atlanta Mayor Kasim Reed said instead of taking a pay raise in his second term, he would donate the money to charity. According to the AJC, that wasn't necessarily the case. Instead, about $25,000 went to pay for health insurance for the mayor and his family after he left office. And now we learn the mayor wrote a personal check last week for $12,000 reimbursing the city for health insurance payments paid out this year. Phil, I'll just let you tackle this one.
Well, you know, here we go on yet another chapter of the disgraceful abuse of public office by this former mayor. I mean, that's incredible. The arrogance, the fact that he actually got away with it for a while. And again, I remind viewers, this is yet another reason why there's an ongoing federal corruption investigation into City Hall. And some people say, why aren't we wrapping it up? Well, this is one reason why. We find out a lot of this disgraceful stuff, this culture of corruption that is being peeled back by B.J. Pack, the federal U.S. attorney.
I mean, Alexis, this seems to never end. There's a story a week in the AJC.
It is. It seems like I'm reading about Donald Trump locally all the time because of the abuse of power and the charges that are railing against him.
But we're talking about the city of Atlanta.
That's what I'm saying.
Here,
That's what
yes.
I'm saying. The charges that are coming against him are just sort of almost never ending, and it's just really disappointing to see it.
Yeah, I feel like this has got to be a thorn in the flesh of Mayor Bottoms because, you know, anything that she does that deserves any type of recognition seems to get overpowered by corruption and, you know, alleged corruption. We'll say alleged corruption that's happening in the city. So I think, so that's what I think about most cases is where does she fit and where does she stand when it comes to these things? Because it's got to be difficult.
Right. It must be hard. But the other thing is it was done under the prior administration to Mayor Bottoms.
Well, why isn't this being cleaned up by Mayor Bottoms? This is the big question.
But let me tell you,
It
but the
is.
payments for the COBRA payments, the health insurance payments, were being paid out this year. And
That's
he
right.
writes a personal check to reimburse the city. So something is still happening under the Bottoms administration.
And there were holdovers from the Reed administration to the Bottoms administration. She has still not cleaned this up to this day.
Well, I think she's in the process of doing it, and the reason that it's coming out is because it's being looked at.
So let me ask you this, because the Atlanta Task Force for the Promotion of Public Trust says the city should create an independent inspector general's office to investigate and identify fraud, waste, and abuse. So how do you do this in the city of Atlanta, Theron, without the fox guarding the hen house?
Well, let's give the mayor some credit first. She created this task force, so we can't leave that part
And
out.
the city council.
Okay.
Yes.
Yeah, but she pushed it through. It was her idea. She campaigned on it, and she did it. So what you see now is that they've come back and said, you know, we need this inspector general, which is something that I think that the administration is open to. And so, and what it also is going to do, Laura, is it's going to kind of combine some of the investigative services that the city of Atlanta, the city attorney's office can do, and the ethics office and others. And so, listen, I think as a taxpayer in the city of Atlanta, I think this is good to make sure that this person is hired. I just think that you've got to make sure that it's done the right way. To what we don't want to get into is a battle between what duties and responsibilities does this person have, and then if it gets into council members and the mayor sort of pushing back once they may or may not get investigated, I think that's the key. But to respond to this thing with former Mayor Reed, I think that at the end of the day, you know, let's be fair on the show, and I'm not defending what he allegedly has done, but what I am going to say is that for
What
our
he
viewers,
did do in this case.
well, what he did, which at the time, you're actually making my point, what he deemed to be totally legal and totally appropriate. And so if you look at from a statement from his former communications director, based on the information that he was given at the time, when he was leaving the mayor's office, he was told and he did what he thought was appropriate. Now, what he has
I
done.
don't think you can have it both ways. You can't give the money to charity and say, you know what, I'm going to get it back from the charity, and then, or get it back from charity, and then I'm going to actually give it to my health insurance.
Yeah, it was a sleight of hand, and some of these were even charities that they were trying to fiddle around with.
Yeah. Well, I do think he had the opportunity, though. The money was basically given to him. And so he had the opportunity to either give it away or keep it. And so he decided to keep it that way.
Or just keep it. Then don't say you're going to give it to charity. Just keep it, and it's okay because it was rightfully your raise.
But he wrote a check for $12,000 back to the city. So as
which
a taxpayer,
never is a good sign.
After he was exposed.
Right, and that's a good point. But I just think that, as you all said, we shouldn't let this sort of overshadow what Mayor Bottoms is doing, who I believe is the most transparent mayor that we've ever had.
We still can't get records out of the Bottoms administration. You forget that little item.
Who is we, Phil? Is it you? Are you actively going down to City Hall? Because I'm down there a lot. Actually, I don't see you down there. Or you said on. When you say we, are you actively?
I'm talking about journalists. You're asking me a question.
Are you as a journalist? Are you as a journalist going down to City Hall and requesting information? No,
yes.
Stop saying we.
Yeah.
Are you Phil Kent?
Yeah.
Okay. What are you requesting that you haven't got?
I want to see all of this stuff.
Have you requested it? Because you know what I'm going to do. I'm going to go to City Hall and I'm going to say, hey.
I call. I don't do a formal open records request.
Okay, all right.
Where is it?
So to come on the show, would you just make my point?
Here's what the mayor does with their favorite journalists. They give them stuff. When they don't like journalists, they don't give them stuff.
Phil, you just made my point. You just said I haven't openly followed the process to get records. So until you do that,
let's talk about open records requests
on this show.
The AJC, the Atlanta Journal-Constitution, did several open records requests. It took them a year. I'm not going to wait a year around.
Let's go down to City Hall on Monday.
They won't give it. They won't give it to me. They didn't give it. If they don't give it, if they don't give it to the liberal AJC, they're not going to give it to me.
All right, we'll wrap it up there. Why don't you all do a test and see? Come back and report it to us. So, coming up, new developments in the controversy surrounding the plants that sterilize medical equipment and emit cancer-causing pollution. Coming up.
Join the discussion on the Georgia Gang Facebook page and watch past episodes on the Georgia Gang YouTube channel.
When the feds released a report more than a year ago warning of potential cancer risks near facilities that release ethylene oxide, the AJC reports Michigan, Illinois, and Colorado took action to alert the public and the media of potential risks, even conducting their own independent testing. In the meantime, Georgia environmental officials were silent until online health publications reported on the risks and caused quite a panic. Then we saw local officials jump into action. Phil, Cobb County has told Sterigenics you comply with safety upgrades or you stay closed. And now, just this week, the city of Covington is asking the BD sterilization facility to cease operations after air tests revealed elevated levels of the cancer-causing gas in 2 nearby neighborhoods. City leaders even begging the state for help. Where is the state in all of this? You know, we were told that they would be more forthright. We would see them, issuing more press releases. And I think the press release that they released on the Covington issue was that, these numbers, these test results were troubling.
Well, you're making a good point. In fact, I think you've set the stage for what has happened here, and I'm glad you've contrasted what those other states have done as opposed to what Georgia did not do.
Through the AJC reporting, yes.
Yes, and I that's some good journalism there, and I think that the state APD has a lot to answer for. I think all of us here on this panel are totally disgusted with the initial response, whether it was in Cobb County and now the latest news that we're talking about over in Covington.
I mean, Theron, this is what the government is supposed to do. This is one of the #1 reasons we have government, is to protect the people. You're talking about cancer, you're talking about health risks. These other states immediately took action and really kind of averted a PR crisis in many cases. Where was Georgia on this?
Well, I think
in some cases they were even hiding it from the governors, even former Governor Nathan Deal and Governor Kemp.
Yeah, there was a committee meeting this week too, where you brought a lot of folks who represent these different counties. I think Fulton, DeKalb, Newton County, and others, and they heard it loud and clear from the constituents that, hey, we need the state to do more. But it was also some legitimate questions that were asked too, and some requests made of Sterigenics. And so, listen, I do believe that we probably need to see more from the EPD and the state. But I also got to, give credit to the local officials, which we have definitely on this show, Commissioner Ott and Senator Jen Jordan and others in Covington, who kind of really pushed the pressure to really get the state and the federal folks involved. But at the end of the day, I do think that Sterigenics should remain closed until they can make sure that the testing is right. And then let's applaud the folks in Covington for looking at what happened in Cobb and with the lack of transparency. Let's not leave that part out either, because when the questions were asked, Lori, from the state and from the counties, these companies did not immediately respond accurately. Now, some responses were accurately given. So I think that ultimately the government has got to do more and communicate with the people, but I think they're doing the right thing by holding these companies accountable.
Right.
I would say, too, from a
But
citizen
it's the local governments that are holding it accountable. And I really want to make that distinction, because we need the state to hold these companies accountable, too.
Yeah, and I mean, I'm going to speak from a citizen perspective who actually lives in the area. I think what we want more than anything else is a test that works, that gives concrete information. That's just the bottom line, because when you do have businesses that are closed down, that people that are suffering is those who are not getting paid, who still are depending on these checks, and these are what we call short-term issues that are impacting people right this moment. So we need to kind of eliminate all of the uncertainty messages and find a way to get some concrete information, whether it comes from the state, the local, the EPD, anyone, just some real information.
Right. I also think that they need to make sure that they're disclosing properly, because early on when Governor Kemp first got involved, they didn't appear to be disclosing everything to him, and so he was soft pedaling on the issue of closing down. So I think we really need to have them both work together and everybody be completely honest.
Right. Well, the Pickens County Board of Education, I want to switch gears here. They took up the issue of transgender bathrooms this week and got quite an earful from the community, decided they will no longer allow transgender students to use restrooms of their choice. This seems like an age-old issue that we kind of visited years ago, and it's backfill.
Yeah, well, it's a sad commentary on what's going on in our culture today, and I do believe in local control over local affairs over all of this stuff, and basically if we're talking about, you know, having what gender going into what bathroom, I think it's best done by the local districts. And in this case, if you do have a transgender and they can have a gender neutral restroom, that's great. But to just willy-nilly make an arbitrary rule that originally happened.
Arbitrary.
Well, it was done without any public input at first. That's why they reversed themselves. But I'm opposed to these arbitrary rules that, yeah, some guy can say he's a woman and go into the woman's bathroom. That has got to be discussed by the school board and the public, and not by just somebody making that stupid decision.
Yeah, in respect to the LGBTQ community, I've never felt that using the schools is a good platform to introduce a change that society is necessarily not accustomed to. So I do think we need to look at that.
Alexis, you can weigh in.
Well, I just think they should, the first decision wasn't arbitrary. I think they discussed it among themselves and made it the correct choice to let people choose to go where they think they belong.
One person made that decision, and he admitted that that's why they had to revisit it.
I understand they need some public input, but the public doesn't need to decide these kinds of things that are right from wrong. Right is right and wrong is wrong. It doesn't take a community to figure that out.
So the public should have no say?
The public can have all the say they want, but they don't need to make a decision.
Real quick, because I'm getting the wrap.
No, I just think that, you know, the one thing for our viewers is that this is a federal court case that basically, yes, this Pickens County board could have probably communicated better with the parents, but the death threats and the threats that we saw from the parents towards these faculty and administrators was inappropriate. All
right, well, coming up, we'll be right back with winners and losers. Stay tuned.
Time now for the week's winners and losers.
Theron, you want to go first?
Yes. First is going to be State Representative Valencia Stovall. She has spent a lot of time in her district sort of demonstrating the new voting machine, and so we talked a lot about that on the show, so I want to give her a big shout out for doing that.
We should have her on the show then.
Yeah, hey, she watches every Sunday. Also, I want to praise Invest Atlanta and City of Atlanta for passing 5 resolutions that will help fund the creation of and rehabilitation of 709 new affordable units in the City of Atlanta on the south side and west side. And also I want to give a big shout out to the University of Georgia, who decided to name their college education after the school's first black graduate, Mary Frances Early. And then lastly, I want to give a big shout out to Beverly Bronner, who I met this week. She watches the show every Sunday. She lives in the Pittsburgh community. She's worked at the 755 Club for a very long time at Turner Field. So I just want to say hello to her and thank you for watching.
Awesome. Nice. Thank you. Phil.
You know, I'm going to make a loser, and I hope it's not going to be a loser. You talk about the ballots. I tried tried out one of those machines too, and you touch screen, and then you have the printer, and then you scan it. Well, I scanned my ballot and it registered, and when the guy wasn't looking, I scanned it again and it registered again. And so, he said, well, now we're going to be watching you, so you can't do that. So I wanted to tell people we got to get that. We got to get that fixed. And my winner is the very low unemployment rate here in Georgia, 3.5. Job was 50% done lower. That's due to Kemp and Trump.
Two quick winners. Shout out to Ashley Bell. He's a new position with the White House. It's awesome. As well as shout out to our panelists, Phil Kent over here, who moderated the event with the James Magazine. The 2019 Georgian of the Year was our very own Senator David Perdue, and Representative David Dreyer, and Senator Ben Watson was also supported. It was an awesome event, and welcome.
Okay, quickly.
Okay, I'm going to salute Elijah Cummings, who passed unexpectedly at a very early time in his life, who was the powerful chair of the Oversight Committee in the U.S. House. He was from Baltimore, so rest in peace.
All right, thank you, everyone, and thank you so much for watching. We'll see you again next week. Bye-bye.
The opinions expressed in this broadcast are those of the panelists appearing in this program.